But there's one speck of good news that emerged from this crisis, and that is the final and complete death of libertarianism on the right and on the left.
Seriously? People out there are dying, and you're trying to use this to attack people you don't like?
Right now, Republican President Donald Trump is proposing a $1 trillion stimulus package for the American economy.
And that has what to do with libertarianism? By the way, before we get going, I just want to say that this video was requested by not one, but two regular supporters, Wesley Savage and Jason Maltz. So if you'd like to recommend a video, just go to Patreon or Subscribestar and sign up at the $2 level.
Long gone are the days of people holding up pocketbook constitutions and keyboard warriors on Twitter railing against taxpayer bailouts for anyone.
No, they aren't, liar! Republicans are not libertarians. You have libertarians and even libertarian lights like those at Reason TV actively criticizing what the government has been doing in response to COVID-19. But you can't refute actual libertarians, so you do what you always do. Point to people who aren't libertarians, who don't even claim to be libertarians, and use that to strawman us. I'll just fast forward this video to where he makes his actual points.
All right, we have more rising for you just after this.
Ah, crap, I'm at the end. Okay, I'll back it up a bit.
When the right was faced with crisis, they made the final break away from the libertarian deadweights that have weighed them down politically for so long.
And I have asked this repeatedly. Name one time the right has actually done something libertarians want. Name one time they actually cut the budget instead of just not raising it by quite as much and calling it a cut. When have they tried to end the war on drugs or calling out the bogus opioid crisis for what it is? When have they tried ending the foreign wars and bringing our troops home? When have they tried ending these endless rounds of quantitative easing and moved to a sound money system, let alone ending the Fed entirely? When have they tried allowing people to trade cryptocurrency as easily as they trade anything else? When have they stood up for freedom of speech as it continually comes under attack in the name of regulating social media? Or increased police accountability and the concept of innocent until proven guilty? That's something that's been under attack a lot lately. When have they tried banning the death penalty? When have they tried eliminating any of the 20,000 plus gun laws, many of which they themselves supported and even introduced? When have they tried ending things like eminent domain and civil asset forfeiture, or removed restrictions on nuclear energy and other cheap, clean, safe, carbon-free forms of energy? When do they try repealing the income tax, or end tax withholding and mandatory filing, or end corporate subsidies, legalize prostitution and other forms of sex work, or increasing the freedom and choice available to the healthcare consumer? When did they last stand up for free trade, or open immigration? Go through the Libertarian Party platform and tell me the last time any of these Republicans stood up for a single word of it. You can't, can you?
The right is ditching libertarianism.
You can't ditch what you never supported, liar.
And we've seen in the Trump administration
Are not libertarians.
he and his administration have very much been influenced by that Chamber of Commerce wing of the party.
The Chamber of Commerce isn't libertarian either. For proof, just look at how they've lobbied for freedom-hating legislation like SOPA.
And that's invoking the Defense Production Act in order to spin up masks from private companies.
Which wouldn't have been necessary if you people had listened to actual libertarians and not gotten your pathetic little panties in a bunch over so-called price gouging. You didn't like the fact that some people were selling masks and charging them a lot of money, so you decided it was better that they weren't selling masks at all. Tell me, and I've asked this question a lot, how can you harm someone by offering them a choice? If I have a mask, and I offer to sell it to you for $10 million, you're not going to take me up on the offer. But how have I harmed you by making this option available as opposed to when the mask wasn't for sale at all? Prices increase in a shortage. This is what's supposed to happen. It stops a few greedy people from hoarding the supplies, and it's also a signal to producers to produce more of the item. Companies are retooling factories to make masks and regulators. Individuals are making homemade masks and selling them. Price controls of any kind stop this effect in its tracks. Here's something else you should have listened to us libertarians on. Check my video, How to Fix Healthcare Without Spending a Dime. Look at how I advocated for stopping the FDA's obstructionist policies a decade ago. Pharmaceutical researcher and libertarian Dr. Mary Ruwart did the same thing in her book, Healing Our World. But you've never even read a libertarian book, have you, liar? Think about how different things would be if people had followed our advice. We would already have had a much more permissive healthcare system, capable of doing what South Korea did. They went ahead and allowed the tests, and regulators just came in later to review efficacy. There have been cheap home tests available for weeks now, approved by the WHO, but until recently the only test allowed is the incredibly flawed and unbelievably expensive and intrusive test from the CDC. The FDA was also until recently obstructing testing of 3 antivirals, remdesivir, favipiravir, and hydroxychloroquine, that might help COVID-19 patients immensely. That's the testing! They were preventing people from looking to see if they could help. In fact, if it hadn't been for FDA obstructionism, we might have had broad-spectrum antivirals on the market long ago, and we wouldn't be in this mess to begin with. I can keep going with many more examples, but I think I've made the point. What has this experience been other than a complete vindication of what libertarians have been saying for decades?
In terms of the stock market, that's gone. They tried everything they possibly could in order to try and juice the markets up.
And it was libertarians saying that wasn't going to work.
But as we said here from the very beginning, you can't juice a market when there's no money.
What do you mean no money? The Fed injected $1.5 trillion into the financial markets. The problem isn't a lack of money, it's a lack of production. More specifically, a lack of production of things that people find valuable. And yes, people have had to stop going to work because of the virus, but markets work based on filling needs. Don't people have a lot more needs right now? How much could the markets be doing to respond to this without your holy government getting in the way? It's free markets that have allowed people to do things like work from home, or sell their own stuff online, or give them all sorts of options for making money while they're unemployed. Imagine how much more they can do without government regulations interfering with them creating their own businesses.
We have to kill the virus, and we have to float the economy in the meantime. There's only one way to do that, and that is the government.
Government is the problem!
If the government did not do this, people would plunge into poverty because people would literally plunge into poverty. They would lose everything that they've amassed, some of the meager savings that they've been able to get.
There wouldn't be any poverty without the government. Imagine if people had been allowed to save their money without having over half their paychecks stolen from them in taxes. Imagine if people had been able to save without money printing and an expansionary monetary policy destroying the value of their savings. Imagine how much money could be made if it weren't for the fact that businesses in America spend more money complying with regulations than they make in profits. Taxation is over half of the national income. Let's be generous to your side and say it's 50%. With greater spending and compliance than profits, that should be more than 50% as well, but again, we'll be generous to your side. 50% of 50% is 25%. That's 3/4 of our wealth stolen by government. And then there's monetary policy and debt. Since the Fed's creation in 1913, they have devalued the dollar over 96%. Figure that into our 25% figure, and that's only 1%, but we'll be incredibly generous to your side by an order of magnitude and say it's 10%. That's 10% of our wealth left over after your holy government stole and scammed from us and inhibited our economy. Now imagine how much better off we'd all be if we'd had the full 100% to work with, if our paychecks went 10 times as far as they go now. Imagine if someone working a job that only paid $10,000 a year had the purchasing power of someone taking home $100,000. And you're saying we need the government to stop us from being plunged into poverty? Give me a break!
Since the 2008 financial crisis,
which again only happened because of your precious government.
And the time that we lost in the beginning is in itself, a disaster. You compare to South Korea.
Wow, I just got through making the case that South Korea did better because they had a less restrictive government. What do you think you're trying to prove here? Or do you think you can just say South Korea and make your case?
Trump there were no tests. There's still not nearly sufficient tests. So we still have no idea how widespread the virus even is.
You cannot put that at Trump's feet. Not when it's people like you and your party who put most of these restrictions in place to begin with. If anything, Trump's to be congratulated for basically bullying and shaming them into not being so obstructionist and finally allowing these tests to go through. He didn't do it anywhere near as soon as he should have, but what did your party do? Need I remind you that while all this was going on, your beloved party was too busy impeaching the president on bogus charges?
That failure to act in the beginning
is the fault of your party and your ideology, not that of libertarians, you lying psychopath! Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe and keep these videos coming by donating, becoming a subscriber and getting special benefits, or even for free with airtime. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.